Well, hello everybody, and welcome to day 8 of our 30-day accelerator. You're almost a third of the way there. Now, we are still working today on setting up our product, the back end of the product. So we've already done the outline, the structure. Then yesterday, the task was to go away and create some thumbnails for the modules and the lessons. We'll have a look at mine in a second. And then today, we're going to wrap our heads around dripping and locking content, okay? Because when somebody accesses your course, do you want them to see everything straight away, or do you want to release that content to them on a schedule over a number of weeks or months? So let me share my account and we'll get into it. All right, so here we are inside of my demo account and we're back in that products area. Now what you can see here is that I've got one product created, that course that we started yesterday, Sassy Bucks, and it's now got a feature image with it. So if I click into this course, it's going to open up like this for me. And you can see that feature image sitting at the top there. So if you have created a feature image for your course, and that image is going to show up in the student library when people log in, you would upload it into here by going into your settings. Now, in addition to that image, what I tasked you with was creating a thumbnail for each of your modules. Okay, these main categories, and then also the lessons that sit inside of the modules. And once you've created those and you've uploaded them into the right place, if you click the little eye here to, the little eye there to preview, it's going to open up the front end view, what your students see. Now, tomorrow we are going to get into customizing the branding on the front end, this part that we're looking at right now. All I want to show you at this point is that if you have uploaded those thumbnails into the back end of the product, they're all going to show through over here. Okay, so you can see that I've put my thumbnails in, and you'll have the option when we go through to set up the branding of the course, you'll have the option to either have your course display at module level or category level, or you can have it display at post level like this, which is obviously a much longer display because it expands everything out. So it's important that, regardless of which one you go with, you have thumbnails in both spots. Okay, so put your thumbnails into the modules and also put them into the lessons. Now, I didn't overthink the thumbnail design at my end. You can see that for each module, each lesson inside of each module, I went for the same design, and then all that I updated was the text on the thumbnail, okay? And I did that inside of Canva. Just a reminder, I did give you guys some templates yesterday as a starting point if you're not feeling very creative, but you can probably go and find something like this in Canva without too many issues. I've got lots of great graphics and things you can use these days. Okay, so once the thumbnails are in, the next thing that we want to think about is how is this content going to be released to your students? Now, you can do it one of sort of 3 ways, really. Firstly, somebody buys your course, and if in the back end here, everything is set to published, and in the offer that they're purchasing, you haven't specified a future date that the access is going to become available. So if you leave the access date field blank inside of the offer, and we'll get to offers in a few days, so I will revisit what I'm saying here. But when you go to set up an offer for your course, there is the option to specify a product access date. And if you leave it blank, then when somebody purchases your offer, they get immediate access to the course. Okay, but if you do specify a product access date in the future, then they're not going to be able to access the content until that date comes. Now, for this little scenario that we're talking about today, we are going to assume that you left the product access date blank. Okay, so you've got students signing up to a course that you've got available on your website, and as soon as they sign up, they get access to the course, and we want to specify here what they're going to be able to see. Now, you've got some options here. The categories themselves can be set to published. They can also be set to draft. When you create new modules or lessons, they'll always have draft status. You can set them to drip, which means that it releases on a schedule, or you can set them to lock. So if you, for example, had a course where you really want people to work through the course in order of module, then you might set the modules to lock. And we'll have a look at it in a second, but what you can say inside of Kajabi is lock this module based on them completing the module before. Okay, that's where the lock function comes in. Whereas the drip function, if you were to say, rather than having everything set as published, you were to say, all right, well, when they purchase the course, I want them to have immediate access to module 1. So I'm going to leave module 1 as published. But then I sort of want a 7-day break in between my modules, or a 30-day break, okay, or whatever it might be. So if you want to release your content on a schedule, which is the drip, then at the category level, not at the lesson level, but at the category or module level, you would go over here to where it currently says published, and you would change that to, just wait one second, to drip. And then you can say here, well, how many days after they purchase the course should they all of a sudden be able to access this module? So if they purchase it today, the 21st, and we put a 7 in here, that means that they're going to be able to access module 2 on the 28th, okay, 7 days from today. All right, now that is on the assumption that you left the product access date field empty or blank in the offer. Now, later on, when we do get into offers, we're going to revisit this topic, and we have to chat about it a couple of times usually for this to sink in. But in the offer, if you were to say, all right, I want all of my students going through this program on the same date, okay, almost like a cohort rather than they purchase and they access, then generally in the offer, you would set an advance product access date. Maybe you set it for the 1st of April, in which case the drip is going to calculate itself off the product access date in the offer. So if you set the 1st of April as being the product access date, on the 1st of April, your students would be able to come and log in, they'd be able to see anything that is published, but then they'll have to wait 7 days from the 1st of April to see module 2. Okay, so using the product access date field inside of the offer is how you're going to keep your students going through the program together. Okay, now we don't have to wait very long to get onto offers. We'll be doing that in a couple of days. So just hold that thought. Okay, but for today's particular scenario, we are just pretending this course is on your website. It's available all year round. When students buy the course, they will instantly be able to see anything in here that you have set to published. And then anything that you want to release on a schedule, you're going to set it as a drip, and you would decide how many days after purchase should the module release. So you might have a 7-day drip here for module 2, then module 3 might be a 14-day drip, and module 4 might be a 21-day drip if you are spacing them out a week apart. Now, if you are going to go with dripping content, inside of your emails over under marketing in the email campaigns area, you could, we'll have a chat about this further as well, don't worry, just floating the idea past you today, but you'd be able to set up an email sequence that when they purchase this particular course, you add them to an email sequence, like the welcome sequence we did on day 2. You add them to an email sequence, and you could have the first email go on day 0 that says welcome to the course, tells them what's been covered in module 1. And then if you are dripping your content 7 days apart, you could have another email in that sequence go out on day 7 that says, hey, module 2 is now ready for access, and what you're covering inside of module 2. So you could pair this course with an email sequence, and you add people to the email sequence using an automation in the offer, all right, which we will set up in a couple of days. Now, the other thing that I would do, if you are going to be dripping content to your students, down inside of your site settings, we open that one up. But you do have a setting here for drip settings. So let's just revisit this. Okay, because this is what specifies the time that the content is going to release to students if it is releasing on a drip. Okay, so the time of day that it releases is going to be set in the drip settings, in your site settings. You set the time, you set the time zone, and I would also leave this little box checked on so that they get a little system email from Kajabi that says, hey, new content available, and there'll be a hyperlink in that email, and they can click the link and go straight through to that module content. All right, so that is dripping, okay, if you do want to release it on a schedule. Now, the other way that I mentioned earlier is you might want to lock the content so that students have to go through the content in order, okay? They can't go on to module 3 if they haven't done modules 1 and 2. So if that's what you would like to do, you would most probably still have module 1 set to published, okay, so that they can watch module 1 straight away. And then in here for module 2, rather than dripping, you would say, just hang on 1 second. And what we're going to say, just while it's thinking about it, we're going to say lock it, and we're going to lock it based on a lesson being completed. And the lesson that we want them to have completed is the last lesson inside of module 1. This case studies of successful affiliate marketers in the tech industry. So if I click here to lock by lesson. All right, once you click on lock by lesson, it's going to bring up all the lessons inside of your program, and you can do a search up here. If you've got a lot of lessons, it might take you a while to scroll down and find them, but you can do a keyword search at the top, and we're looking for that case studies lesson. Oh, there it is. It'll tell you which module the lesson is in. So that's the one that I'm looking for, that last lesson inside of module 1. So I'm going to lock it by that lesson. And then when the student has watched that lesson and it's been marked as complete, then the second module is automatically going to unlock and become available for them to access. So you would go through this process all the way through your course. If you're going to be doing a locked style of program, you would lock the modules based on the lesson in the module before. Okay, so this one too, and down here it keeps going. Now, another scenario where locking is super useful is if you perhaps at the end of the program, you would like to collect some feedback from your students. You could dangle a little carrot, and I do have a training on this. We're not going to go into it in depth today, but we'll have a bit of a chat about it. You could dangle a little carrot and you could say, look, bonuses or bonus resources, for example, could be the module. And you could add in to the lesson before it or the module before it. Probably wouldn't put it into the additional resources module actually. Hang on 1 second, let me just go up. Module 4 was the last training module inside of this course. So what you might like to do at the end of your final training module is add a quiz, and you could use that quiz to collect feedback or testimonials from your students. And then based on them completing that quiz, you could unlock a bonus module with, a bonus resource or a bonus training or a 50% off coupon code to your next course, okay? Whatever carrot idea you can come up with, if you come up with multiple carrots. But you could create a bonus module right at the end of your program that you are going to lock, and the lock would be based on them submitting that quiz. Okay, and the quiz, you could use the quiz with just open-ended questions, asking them for feedback on the course, and if they're happy to be sort of on the record as a testimonial. Now, I have a training on that as well. I'm going to link to that also. But this is what I wanted to cover with you guys today. If you're happy for all of your course content to be published, then you don't really have to do anything other than go through and, change everything from draft status to published status. But if you do want things releasing on a drip or being locked, then that's what you'll need to edit today. Now, just on that, only modules can be set to drip or to lock, okay? The lesson inside of the module can only be set to draft or published, all right? So if you want lessons inside of your module to be releasing on a separate day to the main module, let's just say module 3 releases on day 21, and you want the first 3 lessons inside of module 3 to become published on day 21, but there's a couple of other lessons in there that for whatever reason, you want those to be published a few days later, like day 25. You can't say on the lessons, I'll set that to drip on day 25. It's just draft or published. So in those situations, if you do want to have lessons inside of a module dripping on different days, that is where submodules would be very useful, okay? Because submodules can be set to drip. So inside of module 3, you could add content and you could add Let's just wait for it. Oh, submodule. Module 3, part 1, for example. Let me pause for a second. Let me just do this and I'll come back because it's too slow otherwise. All right, so I've set up those 2 submodules. Now, if module 3 is going to drip on day 21 and you want some lessons to drip along with it, you would have a submodule for part 1 that also drips on day 21. But if for whatever reason there are some lessons inside of this module that you want to drip a few days later, then you could have a second submodule, module 3, part 2, and you could set however many days apart you want that to drip. Now, once you've got those submodules, you would decide which of these lessons gets released with submodule 1, which of these lessons gets released with submodule 2, and you would then wait for the little equal signs to pop up beside your lesson. There it is. And you would drag those lessons into the relevant submodule. Right, it can be a little bit temperamental, but once you've played around with it, okay, so anything here inside of this submodule releases on 21 days. Anything inside of this submodule releases after 25 days. If you left anything up here, you didn't put it into submodules, it would just release with that parent module on 21 days. Okay, so a little bit for you to wrap your head around today, but we will be building on this concept further when we go to set up the offer for this product in a couple of days' time. What we're going to be doing tomorrow is we will be working on the front end of your product, okay? So we've sort of done the bare minimum here. We've put our thumbnails in, we've put some brand colors, but how can we make the front of your course a little bit more interesting and on brand? And then in addition to today's training, I've also got some sort of supplementary trainings that you could dive into if you wanted to. All right, I will see you back for day 9 tomorrow when we dive into product branding. Bye.